First thing that is very important for us to do is make sure our first name, last name, and teacher code are on the backs of our good paper and on our practice paper. We'll be using that later. Next, there are a couple different ways to apply our paint to the jelly plate. I am using a Brayer and tempera paint. I'm using tempera paint because that's what most elementary schools use. It is less expensive and it will not mess up your clothes quite as bad as acrylic paint will. Alright, so notice how I pushed that. I didn't push really hard, otherwise the paint will go, and you don't want that. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also use a sponge on a stick to apply your paint, a regular sponge, a cork, a paintbrush, or other materials. Now I said we're doing the negative stencil technique, so I'm just going to lay a couple stencils down, hearts, cutouts. Then I need to take my good paper. I lay it down. I can then use my hand to rub the whole paper, or because a hand isn't quite as flat, I could use a Baron. Barons are nice and flat. Don't push too hard. Like I said, you don't want all the paint to go out the sides. Or you can use, now this is a roller. It's also called a Brayer. However, I call this one a roller. I call this one a Brayer. Why? Because I don't like to put ink or paint on this one. It's a little bit harder to clean off. These here detach, so they're easier to clean. So I call the detachable ones Brayers because those are for painting, and these are just for rolling. So I call these a rollers. So after you do that, and you can just use one, you pull this off. This is called pulling your print. Hold your jelly plate down as you do it. And there's my print or my artwork. I can put that aside. I'll put that on the drying rack later. Next thing I need to do is I take my practice paper with my name on it. And now I'm going to rub hard. I like to rub using my knuckles when I rub hard. This is called a ghost print. So it's going to be very faint. It's going to be just like the other one, but it's going to be very faint, like a ghost. This is to clean our jelly plate off. Look, and there's barely anything on it. Sometimes there's more on it and you like that and you can save that. Sometimes you just want to recycle it. That's up to you. Now for this one I have to take my papers off and I can just throw those away. Remember, we don't smush into or tear into the jelly plate. They're very fragile, so we never carve into them. I do 2 squirts of hand sanitizer. I get a baby wipe. You can also use a rag or a piece of paper towel. I like the way baby wipes work, so I'm using a baby wipe. I want to make sure I get the edges as well, because every once in a while things smush together. Okay, and I rub-a-dub it real good. Next, I get another piece of practice paper. Happen to write my name on this one, but that's okay. You don't need to. And I'm just going to dry it off. There's a little bit of goo there, a little bit of paint, but that's okay. Last thing I need to do is I need to stack these, or some of you might have containers to put these in. I have a transparency in between, and I simply stack them like this. It's very important that you do not put the gel to the gel because they're made out of silicone. Silicone is interesting. When you put silicone on top of each other, it will actually melt together, and then you no longer have a jelly plate. So make sure that you stack them with a transparency in between or inside the plates, the plastic containers that they came in. When they touch things, even like this, sometimes they will start to melt.